door wasn't supposed to have anything behind it. No knock, no warning, just wait. 5 bundles sat there like they'd been placed with intention. Heavy, patient, waiting to be found. Lucky didn't step outside. He didn't call for help. He already knew this wasn't a mistake. He brought them in one by one, shut the door, locked it, then opened the first package. That was the moment the phone calls started. That was the moment Harlem became untouchable, because those weren't deliveries, they were consequences. To understand why those packages froze a man like Lucky Luciano from thousands of miles away, you have to understand how power really worked in 1950. Not titles, not headlines, territory, silence, respect. By then, Lucky wasn't in New York anymore. The government had pushed him out, sent him across the ocean, told the world he was finished. But exile didn't erase him, it just moved his desk. Naples became his command center. Messages crossed the Atlantic faster than rumors. Men listened. Costello handled the daily pulse of New York. Lansky counted the money. Genovese waited, impatient, watching every dollar that didn't pass through Italian hands. And all of them still checked in with Lucky. All except one man, Harlem. Harlem didn't answer calls, it didn't send envelopes, it didn't ask permission. Bumpy Johnson had locked that neighborhood down years earlier. Numbers, protection, street order. Harlem ran clean because Bumpy ran it. And he didn't kneel to anyone. Not Italians, not commissions. Not old understandings written in smoke-filled rooms decades ago. That independence irritated people, especially Genovese. From his side of the ocean, Genovese saw Harlem as unfinished business. Too much money flowing the wrong way. Too much territory flying a flag that wasn't his. And in January of 1950, he decided to stop respecting old deals. On a private line crackling with distance, he laid it out. Harlem was producing millions. They were seeing none of it. And Bumpy wasn't changing, so maybe the situation needed help changing. Lucky listened, said nothing. Silence was how he weighed risk. He didn't hate Bumpy, he understood him. That made the decision harder. Harlem wasn't just money, it was pride. And pride causes wars nobody wins. But distance does strange things to judgment. What exactly are you suggesting? Lucky finally asked. Genovese didn't say war, he said presence. He said professionals, quiet men, no chaos, just enough pressure to remind Harlem it wasn't invisible. From Italy it sounded manageable, abstract, like moving pieces on a board you weren't standing on. Lucky gave the nod with conditions. No amateurs, no blood unless forced. And if it collapsed, the blame had a name. Genovese agreed too fast. Within weeks, 5 men were chosen. Not loud guys, not flashy. Men with experience carving space where it wasn't offered. They came from cities that understood resistance. Chicago, Detroit. Men who knew how to smile while tightening a grip. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't head straight to Harlem. They checked into Midtown, blended in, planned to slide sideways into the neighborhood like they belonged. What they didn't know was that Harlem had already noticed them, and Bumpy Johnson never ignored strangers who moved like they had somewhere to be. By the time those 5 men unpacked their suits, Harlem was already watching. Every step, every question, every lie they told themselves about being unseen. They thought they were setting a trap. They had no idea they were walking into one. Bumpy didn't rush. That was the mistake outsiders always made. They thought silence meant hesitation. In Harlem, silence meant assessment. The call came in quietly. A hotel porter doing his job too well. 5 men. Expensive shoes. Eyes that measured rooms instead of admiring them. Chicago voices pretending to be tourists, asking questions that didn't belong to Midtown. Bumpy listened, thanked him, hung up, and made another call without changing his tone. Illinois Gordon picked up on the second ring. Illinois wasn't muscle, he was something worse. A man who could stand 10 feet away and never be remembered. Bumpy told him exactly what he wanted. No contact, no warnings, just a shadow that didn't blink. For 3 days, Illinois watched the Italians drift in and out of Harlem like they owned tomorrow. He saw them mark storefronts with their eyes. Saw the conversations that ended too quickly when locals realized who they were talking to. Saw money promised that didn't belong to them yet. By the 4th night, Illinois had the map built in his head. 3 policy spots. Spread smart, East Harlem, close enough to test boundaries, far enough to pretend it wasn't a takeover. They'd already flipped a few runners, promised better splits, sold confidence. Illinois brought it all back. Bumpy sat with the information like a judge holding a sentence. Then he asked one question: do they think they're alone? Illinois nodded, too comfortable, too relaxed. That was all Bumpy needed. Let them build, he said. Let them commit. Because men who commit don't run. Valentine's Day came and went with laughter in the wrong places. On 125th Street, a storefront opened under a harmless name. Social club up front, numbers in the back. The Italians finally felt it. Cash moving, locals testing the odds, momentum. Tony Bala made the call that night, proud enough to be careless. Operation smooth, no interference. Harlem quiet, silence fooled him. That same night, Bumpy filled Small's Paradise with men who didn't ask questions. 20 chairs, every one of them earned. No speeches, just instruction. 3 more days, then everyone comes in. Together, not one missing, not one escaping. This wasn't about revenge. This was geometry. If one slipped away, 10 more would follow. Harlem couldn't afford loose ends. February 17th, just before midnight, the Italians locked up their operation, feeling like they'd cracked the code, laughing, counting, already talking about expansion. 2 blocks from their car, the neighborhood exhaled. The lights didn't flicker, they vanished. Darkness swallowed the street so completely it felt planned. Tony slowed, reached instinctively for reassurance that wasn't there. That's when the shadows separated themselves from the night. Men stepped forward from doorways that had been empty seconds before, from cars that hadn't been noticed, from angles no one thinks to check until it's too late. Hands closed, voices stayed low. Tony turned and found Bumpy Johnson standing so close he could smell his cologne. Calm, centered. A gun held steady like it had always been there. "Evening," Bumpy said. "You boys look lost." One of them tried to run. He didn't make it far. By the time the streetlights snapped back on, the block was empty again. No bodies, no noise, just Harlem breathing like nothing had happened. The cars rolled out separately. Hoods pulled tight, directions erased. Water sounds grew louder. Metal doors opened. And inside a warehouse that didn't care who screamed, 5 men finally understood they'd never been negotiating. They were evidence. And Bumpy Johnson was about to decide how loud the message needed to be. The hoods came off slow. Light burned their eyes first, then space. Too much of it, concrete floor, empty walls, cold air rolling in from somewhere nearby. Water, boats. Somewhere close enough to hear life moving on. They were seated in a circle, tied clean, no panic in the knots. Professional hands had done this. Then they saw him. Bumpy stood in the center, calm like he'd been there all night. Around him, his men didn't shift, didn't whisper. Guns stayed low but ready. This wasn't a standoff. This was a meeting that had already reached its conclusion. Bumpy spoke like he was explaining a bill. "You're going home," he said. "Every one of you." Hope sparked too fast. Tony leaned into it, desperate enough to believe. "Look," he said, forcing steady into his voice. "We can fix this misunderstanding. We were told." Bumpy raised one finger. The room went quiet again. "You weren't told wrong," Bumpy said. "You were sent wrong." He walked the circle slowly, stopping behind each chair, not threatening, studying, measuring how much fear fit inside each man. "You came into a place that already had an owner," he continued. "Didn't knock, didn't ask, just started moving furniture around like nobody lived there." One of the Italians swallowed hard. "We can leave. Tonight, no trouble." Bumpy nodded. "You will." Then he turned, picked up a phone from the table and dialed without looking at them. "It's ready," he said. "Send it." The click sounded final. Tony felt it then, the shift. The realization that home didn't mean breathing, it meant being delivered. "Please," someone whispered. "We'll tell him it was a mistake." Bumpy stopped at the door and looked back. "Men like your boss don't listen to apologies," he said. "They listen to outcomes." He paused just long enough for the words to settle. "This isn't personal, it's containment." Then he stepped out, the door closed, the warehouse stayed quiet. Days later, the phone rang in Naples before sunrise. Lucky answered it already awake. Costello didn't waste time. 5 men, missing. No sightings, no bodies, and then the second call came in. Genovese's place. 5 packages delivered like clockwork. Lucky didn't ask what was inside, he already knew. 1 word had been included, nothing else: Harlem. The line went dead, but the message stayed loud. Within hours, Lucky shut it down, every plan, every thought of expansion. Harlem was removed from maps, conversations, ambition. Genovese protested, talked about pride, about retaliation. Lucky ended it with a sentence: "You don't fight a man who turns people into warnings." The underworld learned fast. 5 went in. 5 came back wrong. No details, no stories, just an outcome everyone understood. Years later, someone asked what really happened in that warehouse. The answer was simple. Bumpy didn't rush. He explained. Then he ended it. Clean, necessary, absolute. And Lucky Luciano never tested him again. Because some territories cost too much to touch.